Hey, welcome to the Big Bite. Here with Sunny and Shay on Brit Asia TV. We've got a lot on the show today.
We certainly have. A little bit later on, coming up, we're going to be talking about the recipe of the day. Plus, we have our celebrity interview and not forgetting our entertainment and movie news. All of that to come. Right now, though, we're getting very, very political for the next couple of shows in the lead up to the elections. Joining us on the sofa today, we have Mr. John Hemming from the Liberal Democrats, and he's running for Birmingham Yardley, candidate for Birmingham Yardley. John, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. I think it's only fair that we start off with one question which has possibly got slightly frustrating for the Lib Dems to hear, but it's something that everybody really does feel passionate about, especially the students. Do you think that the Liberal Democrats will ever be able to recover from the fiasco, which was the promise about the student fees, and to where we are now with what's happened with the coalition government?
Somebody has to pay student fees. Somebody has to pay the universities. And in the end, it's the government that pays the universities. And the question was, how you fund that. Now, we would ideally have had it funded from what's called the general fund. That is general taxation. You can't actually have it free, although obviously that means that graduates wouldn't pay anything specifically. So ideally, that would be the case. But two problems. Problem one, coalition. Means you can't get everything that you want. Problem two, general financial crisis. So there's not a lot of money around. So we were in a situation where we couldn't get what we wanted, which is to do it for free.
Okay? So do you, in a sense, do you feel that you may have overpromised anyway then? Because you knew that general financial crisis was there when you came in.
Because we could have dealt with that had we been in overall control.
Right.
And we did say we'd do it gradually, not immediately. But the difficulty when you have a coalition is you do have to make compromises. So the question then is how do you approach it? And what we said, we wanted to get a fairer alternative. And we have to remember, I always focus on one point, which is what do the students or graduates pay? And it's very important that nobody has to pay up front. So the government actually pays the universities. Okay. And then what happens is that people pay a charge to the government for what the government's paid to the universities. And that, the old system was they paid 9% of their income over £15,000 for 25 years until they hit a limit. And the new system is that they pay 9% of their income over £21,000 until they hit a limit, but it's for 30 years. And the point about the limit is 75% of graduates never actually hit the limit. They keep paying 9% of their income over £21,000.
But there's a lot of students out there that feel that, you know, this is a policy that, you know, they backed you on and they believe that you were the party for the students and education, and they don't feel that way.
Yes, but what we did was we created a fair alternative by taking the government subsidy that was there and concentrating it on the poorer graduates by increasing that threshold by £6,000. So 25% of graduates will, over their lifetime, pay less under the new system than under the old system. So for the 25%...
So your policies before going into the elections last time round weren't thought out as well as when you got into... No, it was thought out well. When you got into a coalition.
It was thought out well, but we weren't aiming to get into a coalition. We were aiming to be in total control.
Yeah, right.
And the point is, when you're presented with a situation where you have less than 10% of the seats in Parliament, and the Conservative Party is a lot bigger, and we had to go into coalition to rescue the finances of the country because we don't want to end up like Greece, right? And you know, you can see what's going on in Greece at the moment, where people may not end up getting the paid.
So this time round, everyone says it might be another coalition, and a lot of people are courting, you know, the Liberal Democrats and thinking that that might be the party that we have to go with. But this time round, you've made some red line promises.
Well, we're talking about, if I just 2 points finally on student tuition.
Yeah, please carry on.
Two very important points. Number one, lots more students are going to university. Number two, lots more students as a proportion from deprived backgrounds are going to university. So from the point of view of social mobility, and to me, social mobility, this is why the pupil premium was such an important concept, which is that you're trying to say you succeed on your abilities, not your parents' wealth.
Right.
And we delivered that. And that's a good thing. And I am actually proud of the fact that we have improved social mobility through the education system. And that before we go on to where do we go from here, I think that's good. I think delivering on better social mobility is a positive thing, and people should support us on that basis.
You know, the one thing that everyone will say about politicians is you're always great at taking something that you've promised and perhaps not fully delivering, but giving a good spin on it. Yeah. So interesting that you say you've provided better social mobility. If the Conservatives were sat here right now, they would say it wasn't you, it was them. That's what happens when you have a coalition government.
Yeah. Exactly. Had we had a government on our own, we could have done things differently.
So let's talk now.
So we're now in a situation where we're still in a financial problem, but it's not as big as it was. So we've come out of...
So here's the question then. If you go into another coalition and the promises that you're making or the promise that you had made in the past...
Some red lines. So it's the red lines.
Red lines, okay.
The party has announced some red lines.
Okay, so why didn't they do that last time?
You must know some of them. What do you know as the red lines?
You tell us.
No, you tell us.
That's all right. Okay, £12,500 tax threshold.
Okay.
Last general election, we said we wanted to increase the tax threshold to £10,000.
Right.
So people pay no tax on their first £10,000 of earning. And that's, to me, a progressive policy because you're benefiting more the low paid. The wealthy, wealthy can generally look after themselves. And for all the arguments, when you look at the stats, over this parliament, the wealthiest 10% are paying more tax as a proportion of their income than at the start compared to every other decile, every other 10% of people. So we've delivered on that. So at the last general election, we said we wanted to increase the tax threshold to £10,000. We've delivered 10,600. The Tories said it wasn't possible. We're now saying it should be 12,500.
Right.
Okay, so that's one red line. What's the others? Second
red line is about education funding. And obviously we're in a difficult situation financially. You know, balancing the books is not easy. There are parties that say austerity isn't necessary. One of them got elected in Greece. Let's see what happens there. There are parties, the Greens, Respect, Tusk, who say austerity isn't necessary in this country. And if people believe that, they're wrong, but if they believe that, they should vote for Respect, Tusk, and the Labour Party, the Lib Dems and the Conservatives accept we've got to balance the books. We say within that, we want to protect education spending in real terms, meaning that not just cash terms, but it goes up each year by inflation. Right? That's £2,500 million more than the Labour Party, £5,000 million more than the Conservative parties. That's the second red line.
And do you think that the vote for the Liberals is a vote well used?
I think so. We have delivered, you know, on a number of things, and you know.
But at the same time, you say you delivered, but then you were in a coalition where both parties are actually taking claims for the. They're saying that we did this and we had to.
They couldn't have done what was in government on their own.
Okay.
Right. And we were
do what you could do.
We have to respect the democratic verdict of the voters in the UK. And if the democratic verdict of the voters is we don't want anyone to be in overall control, we have to work within that to do the best we possibly can.
So who would you like to ideally go into bed with then?
Well,
would it be the Liberal? Would it be Labour or Conservative?
I don't really.
Or SNP?
In many ways, I am not somebody who wants to. I do lots of injustice campaigning and trying to sort problems out and things like that. So I'm not focused on ministerial office.
Okay.
And I actually think, personally, I would like to see Parliament strengthened.
Okay.
The concept of our Constitution is you have three main estates of the Constitution: the judiciary, the government, the executive, and the Parliament, the legislature. And they're sort of not really separate, but they're supposed to be sort of separate.
So
and I have been working to separate. You see, you get silly policies like the one on term time absence at the moment. I don't know if you know about this, but where there's a war developing between schools and parents.
Yes.
You know about all of
this.
Now this is completely nuts, right? We have I'll tell you this, right? In the NHS, we know there's a problem in what? In A&E, yeah?
Right.
Carry on.
The A&E problem comes in part from people not being able to go to the GP. The GP is busy signing sick notes for children who are ill, because otherwise the parents will be prosecuted for keeping their children off school. It's completely mad.
Right.
So what are you proposing?
Well, the point about strengthening Parliament is this issue was never debated in Parliament. It went through on the nod. Nobody challenged the government on something that's causing masses of misery across the country. And that's where Parliament needs to get greater independence and do its... Parliament is supposed to be the voice of the people, challenging the government. And it often whispers, it doesn't shout.
Let's focus for a moment, if we can, on this channel. You're on BritAsia TV. It's the most viewed South Asian channel in the country. What is it that you yourself are going to be able to do? I know that you're running for candidate for Birmingham Yardley. To represent those that feel that they don't have a voice. You know, this is a question that we've been asking all political parties that have come on the show. Over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of discussion with regards to this term, Islamophobia. There's been a real disconnect between the government, between parties, and those people who really feel that they're not being represented. I'm not just focusing on the Muslim community, focusing on the South Asian community as a whole, who are getting branded for the actions of a few. What is it that you are promising?
Well, what have I done?
What have you done, and what are you promising for the future?
There was a saga in Birmingham, which was called Trojan Horse, and recently the Select Committee on education looked at everything and thought, well, there wasn't actually any evidence of children being radicalised in school. And at the time, the fingers were being pointed saying that person's an extremist, that person's an extremist. Now I stood up and I said, naming some individuals that I'd known them for a long time, they weren't extremists. Right? Mohammed Shafiq is one I named because he was chair of Golden Hill at Governors. He was actually also at times chair of the Sparkbrook Ward Labour Party. Now, you need people who are willing to look for the truth, identify what the truth is, and stand up for the truth, who will listen to people. And I have a track record of doing that in previous parliaments, so I would intend to continue doing that.
So that's kind of what you
important.
want to do. Yeah,
No,
I completely agree. I mean,
yeah.
looking at past, records is a very important point. But what are you saying to the viewers now? What are you going to do now? If
well, again, on the issue specifically of Islamophobia, the parties are committed to recording that the same way as anti-Semitic crime is recorded. But it is politicians actually have a function beyond merely passing laws, which is of political leadership, which is of listening to people and finding out what's really going on. I use the term time absence thing. It hardly gets any press, in this election campaign. It's a massive issue for parents. It doesn't get the attention it should do. So you have to listen to people and speak about their problems. Article 13 of the 1688 Bill of Rights, which is the fundamental constitutional document of this country, in fact, talks about Parliament there to deal with all grievances. Well, if people tell me what their grievances, I should work on resolving their grievances.
Okay, so you've got busy campaign going on, and good luck. You want to say anything to our viewers?
Yes, we'll give you 60 seconds.
60 seconds.
To say why they should vote for you.
Exactly, why people should vote for you.
Well, the point about the Liberal Democrats is we have ensured that the government has a heart as well as a head. We have to get the books balanced, we have to get the finances right, otherwise everything falls apart, as is happening in Greece. But we also need to make sure we look after the poorer people in society. We can't just put in massive welfare cuts. We need to make sure it's worth going into work. So universal credit actually will help a lot in there. But we also need to make sure social mobility is a key thing. And social mobility with the pupil premium, actually the new student fees system, is now better than it was. And that's at a time when we have less money. We've done a good job. Vote for us.
Thank you so much, John.
So much.
It was a pleasure having you in here.
Right. Mr. John Hemming from Liberal Democrats, who's running for candidate for Birmingham Yardley. We'll be right back straight after the break.